Here we go, everybody. Welcome back. Let's have a look at Bitcoin real quick. So we look as though, and again, it can be deceptive because this is a fair old bounce, and the buyers are back in town. I wouldn't say the bulls are in charge, but they're definitely, not bothering to hibernate this winter. Certainly not. And we've reclaimed the 200 exponential on the daily, which is a nice place to see. We're also above the top area of what I would consider to be this accumulation range, which is still possible. We're outside of it now, which means that it could end up going into what I've been talking about the last couple of videos, which is there's three scenarios here. First, most likely is that we accumulate within this area. Second, most likely is that we go into a V-shaped recovery. Third, most likely, which I suppose makes it the most unlikely, is that we go into a bear market, which is why we have these areas down here for potential lows and bottoms. We've got to plan for every eventuality, obviously. Excuse me. But now that we're above here, we could actually think about this accumulating for a short period of time between these areas. Now, this was the original buy zone for when we broke down into this, and this was before we started to entertain the very realistic idea that there would be a sell-off due to the Megatron virus or the Megalodon or whatever it's called these days, which is part of the reason why markets sold off. It's definitely one of the last things that came into the picture, which pushed everything down the stairs. So we saw traditional markets go. We were watching commodities go, weren't we, last week? Basically a week ago when we were talking about it. Last Monday I was saying that there's cracks in the market, and it reminds me of March 2020. We looked at the way that oil was falling. We looked at obviously the continuation of the dollar index, and then we looked at other markets sort of going into downtrends. And then we speculated that this might end up with one of these, and we got one. And then we, I suppose, just looked back in time in March 2020. So, well, look, we got one of these before, and it ended up being one of the best dips anyone could have ever bought in their entire life. It's a scary dip to buy. Don't get me wrong, because you don't know what's going to come around the corner. This is the idea. But based on the wick when we were observing this that night, or I think we were doing the live stream, weren't we, that night, I think it was actually. We were observing the wicks and going, look, the buyers on most cases outweigh the sellers with these wicks, and with those large wicks, they kind of tell a story to say that the bulls are not hibernating in the winter this time around, and the bears, although they are in control of the trend, they've got a fight on their hands down at these low levels, and it would appear that for the moment the bulls are really fighting hard. So if we go down to the 4 hourly, it tells another story. So we got that, and we had what I said would be the top of the range, and it proved to be a very sort of strong resistance. But again, like I always say, and it's not just me, it's the rules. The more times you tap a resistance, just like the more times you tap a support, the more likely it is to break, and it's actually broken here. But the Bollinger Bands on the 4 hourly are pinching here, so it would look like this could potentially be the top for today's move, and then we find a new range, which is why I've squiggled that range in here. So if we do not come back down into this range, which I think is very likely that we do, but if we don't, there is a chance that, and it would be very bullish if we were to, that we accumulate within this kind of range. So we come back down to the 49,000 and up to the 53,000, back down, and then we kind of accumulate within here before we actually take off, or obviously break down. Anything's possible. Anything is possible. There's no guarantees in trading. But it's been a great response for not just Bitcoin, but for the market as a whole, and traditional markets too. I could say the bullish outlook on the way that the Nasdaq's looking at the moment. If this week continues this way, and again it's only Tuesday, we're going to have a bullish engulfing candle on the weekly, which would suggest that markets are basically just going to recover quite well. But again, we've not closed any weeklies yet. Now the bad apple in the bunch is the dollar. Again, we've been watching and admiring the dollar strength for quite a while now, expecting it to continue up, and always hopeful that we break down at significant areas, but we don't. We continue to go through, and this is still a very bullish chart. So we treat it as a bullish chart. It will go up until it stops. We've marked off specific areas. Next one will be around 97. Hopefully we get a rejection from there. If not, we're going all the way back up to basically just after the pandemic levels. So we're already testing the pre-pandemic range now. If we get back in this range, it would be relatively aggressive, and it's a large range to go. But rejections are inevitable at some point. This is a bearish chart on the long term, but on the short term, as in like a daily chart, which is a short term when you're looking at something like the dollar index, which goes back decades, Short term is a daily chart, and the daily chart is strong still. So expect strength from the dollar until we get a significant rejection. And just a rejection isn't enough. We need to start to see this break down, going into lower lows, lower highs, an actual downtrend form. At the moment, there's nothing but strength on this chart, so bear that in mind. That is that's the bad apple that could potentially spoil the bunch in the barrel. But the rest of the apples do look quite tasty at the moment. But we do have to be aware of rot setting in from this. Anyway, there's no need to beat around the bush any further. It is what it is. It's been a good response. I think that we're potentially at the top of it for today. But we've already exceeded my expectations very quickly. But it can turn around very quickly. So again, until a range has been established, it'll be way more speculative than it would be usually. But overall, I did say that if we were to break down into the mid to low $40,000 zone, it would be a buying opportunity, whether you buy it straight away or you wait a little while. This sell-off, this giant sell-off anyway, despite the downtrend, this giant sell-off was not driven by Bitcoin. It was driven by outside things, and that's why I'm more bullish on something like this than I would be if it had just happened on its own. Right, I hope you have a nice day, everybody. Join the Telegram, the Patreon. I've got lots of links for you to click in the description below. If you don't have those exchanges or whatever, there's always perks and benefits for you to do it if you decide that that's something that you want to try. I would suggest that if you don't have something like a Kucoin or a Gate.io account at the moment, then you think about getting them, because we're talking about a very oversold crypto scenario right now, and I don't believe we're going into a bear market. So if you don't have some of these, I suppose, decent exchanges, I suppose mainly Kucoin, but Gate.io is pretty good too, where there's all these other opportunities where you can really find some epic gems. Once we come out of this, which I expect at this stage now, is going to be towards the end of this year, and we'll see where we are next year. There's likely to be some amazing opportunities. In fact, we're already looking at them right now, but I just want to see this ranging established. And the smaller exchanges can offer some of the biggest returns. You just got to be careful, because it's risk to reward. And occasionally I bring these things onto the channel, like we did some VRA, a bit of BEPRO, which didn't work out particularly well. OMI, that was hit and miss. Still did a 2x, I think. What else did we have? AI, which was amazing and now doesn't look particularly good. So yeah, Uno as well, that was pretty good, but again, they've all been sold off massively. There's a time and a place, and we'll be looking at those again. But to be honest with you, for those with the big balls and the ones who like the risk, some of those small cap coins, I suppose, on those exchanges, they have been sold off. And if you believe, like I do, that the market will continue to go up over the next few months, into next year, so the lengthening cycles theory does definitely appear to hold weight at the moment. We still have to wait a little while. Like I say, I'm open to any suggestions at the moment. The market didn't look like it had topped anyway, and so I'm okay for it to continue to go up. I've got very specific ways of how I determine the market's peaking. And none of that had been. The only other peak that looked as though there was a peak was just around a year ago. That could have been a potential peak, but no, it wasn't. The market continues. So it's definitely a different market now than it's ever been. So lengthening cycles definitely seems like a relevant thing to expect now. So yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it there. But I hope you have a nice day, everyone. Take it easy.